Hey, Giants fans, welcome to this edition of the Giants Town Hall. It is the free agency recap and draft preview presented by Verizon. I'm Bob Papa with two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks. And Carl, an exciting time for the Giants after a very busy offseason and 1 year of Giants head coach Joe Judge. A lot to be optimistic about this year.
Well, it really is. You saw the foundation poured during the course of last season. You saw the growth of some of the younger players, but just the program itself growing in the right direction. So this is a year where you should start to see some of it pay off.
What about your impressions of Joe Judge after year one and the way he and his staff handled things?
Well, when you look at, and it's league-wide, but when you look at how they had to deal with a pandemic, new coaching, no camps, installing new systems, some teams had an advantage because they knew their personnel and they knew their coaches. They had to do it from scratch, and I think the job that he did of getting everybody on the same page and getting them to work as a cohesive unit is nothing short of great.
Season ticket holders are enjoying this Giants Town Hall presented by Verizon. And Carl, I know Giants fans that you run into and that I run into are very enthusiastic about sort of the direction of this football team right now.
Well, they should be. I mean, when you look at it, and let's just say we'll look at the record and see it for what it is, obviously, but then on comparison to the division, they were in it for, you want more wins, obviously, but you also want an opportunity to win the division title. The division champion, the Giants, swept. So there's reason to feel good about their chances within the division and to see how they go beyond that. But, this division didn't run away from the Giants. It was a bad division. Let's see it for what it is. But the Giants competed, and they had a chance to make it to the playoffs.
Here's what's coming up during the course of this program. We're going to talk with General Manager Dave Gettleman. Assistant General Manager Kevin Abrams is going to join us. Then we're going to hear from a couple of new Giants, Adoree Jackson and Kyle Rudolph will join us, as well as Blake Martinez coming out an outstanding first season with Big Blue. Carl, let's take a look at some of the key additions that the Giants have made this offseason, presented by MetLife. And, the Giants, you could also add to this list, Leonard Williams, because,
the number one free agent.
The number one free agent. So you almost add him to this list. But let's talk a little bit about what Kenny Golladay and Adoree Jackson and this group of players could help bring to this team.
Well, I think with Kenny Golladay, Bob, he gives you size at the receiving position. He gives you an opportunity for your quarterback to not have to be pinpoint. He can create those 50-50 situations, out-muscle a guy because he's big, he's physical, can create space with his size and create a bigger target. Adoree Jackson, he is ranked amongst the top cornerbacks on balls past 20 yards or more. So he is a good defender on an island, and you like that as a compliment to James Bradberry.
Yeah, and I encourage all the Giants season ticket holders out there, go to the Giants media platforms or Giants.com to take a look at the inside the film rooms where Carl and Sean O'Hara and David Deal really break down the key components about a lot of these new additions on the football team. I look down here, I see Danny Shelton. Here's another player that, he's played in New England. He's played under Coach Belichick. He's a veteran player. They brought in a lot of guys that sort of fit the profile of what Joe Judge is building with his staff.
Well, it fits the profile of what Coach Judge wants to do, but it also complements how they want to do things. When you look at a guy like Kyle Rudolph, right? You'll look at last year and you'll say, it's nothing special, right? But if you rewind a year before that and the year before that, he was one of the biggest threats in the red zone this game has seen in a while at the tight end position. So there's something there when they look at these players. It's just beyond what fans see on the surface. They see what a player can do and contribute and to be an asset to what and how they want to execute this program.
Yeah, and you mentioned Kenny Golladay, and Kyle Rudolph falls into the same category when you're talking about catch radius. If you look at Kyle Rudolph highlights, it's not like these are garden variety throws.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's making sideline, back of the end zone, red zone touchdown catches with a degree of difficulty that if this was the Olympics, the judges would give it a 10. It's not like it's just walk-in stuff.
Well, it's not. And when you look at, you talk about the level of difficulty, if you look at some of his red zone catches, you'll say, boy, he and Rob Gronkowski are making some almost impossible catches down there. So a quarterback is not afraid to give them a chance to catch footballs.
Dalvin Tomlinson is one of the key players that the Giants did lose this offseason. Kevin Zeitler as well, and Golden Tate. Look, you can't keep them all. You want to keep them all. I know the Giants agonized over how they were going to make that work. But that is going to be a void to fill because I know you love the game of Tomlinson.
Yeah, Tomlinson was just such a great compliment. And then the irony of all of this, Bob, is that the Giants had the top 2 interior linemen or top 2 defensive linemen in this free agent class. So if you had to pick one, I guess you take the best guy, but obviously to be able to keep both of them would have been a great luxury, but they'll be able to feel that because you still have Dexter Lawrence there, and then you've got guys like Danny Shelton that'll come in and give you production.
Yeah, so that's a look at the state of the Giants, and MetLife presents a look at some of the new arrivals for the Big Blue as we get ready for the 2021 season. As we look back at free agency and look ahead to the upcoming 2021 NFL Draft. And Carl, it's kind of interesting because, throughout the course of the offseason, it's really 2 things that are running concurrently that wind up becoming intertwined. The free agency part of it, your player evaluation, and then how you decide you're going to go about drafting.
Yeah, that is the value proposition that I'm looking forward to discussing with Kevin Abrams and also with Dave Gettleman.
Yeah, we're going to be joined by Dave Gettleman momentarily, and I think he is just about set. So let's welcome in the Senior Vice President of the New York Giants and the General Manager, Dave Gettleman, who joins us. Dave, first of all, congratulations on a fun offseason. Were you expecting to be that heavily involved in a lot of the free agents, or is it something that just kind of developed because of opportunity?
Well, a lot of it was opportunity. It's kind of interesting. It was like an old school free agency period. Guys came in, you had an opportunity to spend time with them and get to know them a little bit as people. We had thorough physicals on everybody. So it was just, opportunity met need, and we just felt it was the right thing to do.
Dave, I want to go back and talk about when this pandemic hit. It changed how everybody did things. So campuses were closed. Your scouts had to figure out, or you had to figure out what your scouts could do, what access they would have. And then you had players that opt out. So now here you are evaluating players that maybe didn't play this year that are in this year's draft, and you have, just a truncated season. Talk about some of the adjustments that you guys had to make in order to really get the evaluations that you needed.
Well, the colleges were very cooperative in that most of the schools actually had Zoom calls for the scouts. So the scouts would have an opportunity to at least get basic information, and then they would have to work their sources, at the school in the building. And it was difficult because the only thing, our scouts are spread all over the country. And one of the things we decided was once there was a season, I told the scouts, I was talking to Ronnie Bonds, our medical special, who's in charge of our medical department. We talked to Ronnie about it, and what we told them was if they had to, I wanted them to see games every weekend, so that at least that way they could get an up close and personal view of the player physically. We told them if they had to, they could spend the night either at the night before the game or the night after the game in a hotel. I just wanted them on the road for just one day or one overnight. So they got to see them there. There were some All-Star games. You guys know the Senior Bowl was played, the Gridiron, the NFLPA game. So, excuse me, there were some games. There was the HBCU Bowl. So, there was some opportunity to see these guys physically. but it made it's made it very difficult. The opt-out piece is obviously crazy. I've spoken to other professional sports GMs who've drafted in this atmosphere, and what were some of the things they thought about. And then, of course, we had a very lively conversation about how internally about how we were going to deal with the opt-outs, and not look at them as guys that quit their teams or whatever, but how we really viewed them on a case-by-case basis. So there's been a lot of balls juggled in the air. It's been very different, but at the end of the day, it's what these guys do between the white lines on Saturdays. So that's really what you're gauging these kids by.
Dave, from an intel collection standpoint, is it maybe even more important this year, whether it's members of your coaching staff that have just come from college or relationships that you and your staff have with the college head coaches to try to get that information that maybe you couldn't get by being there as often as you were?
Absolutely, Bob. Obviously we've got a number of coaches on Joe's staff are just only recently removed from college, so they've obviously maintained their connections. Plus, I got to tell you, our college scouts do a great job. They're very well connected, and they're able to touch the coaches as well. So between Joe and his staff and our college guys, we're able to get the intel we felt we needed, and that's allowing us to really truly vet each and every one of these kids on our draft board.
Dave, I want to talk about the shiny toy mentality that fans have. Every year around the draft, they get infatuated with the next new thing. But there is, in your world, you draft players the year before that, in the year before that. So there is a development curve that you have on players. So when people say, well, you need this or you need that, they don't have a clear understanding of how you guys value the guys you drafted in their ascension or their development. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it influences decisions you make this year just based on what you already have?
Exactly. And the other part of that, Kyle, is they don't know our practice squad guys that spent the full year on our practice squad. They're in meetings, they're practicing, and you watch them develop. So we value the back end of our roster a little bit differently than the average person because, as you said, it's the next greatest thing is all anybody's interested in. And, for what it's worth, we actively evaluate our players all throughout the year. And then, one of the things we do is we take a look at who's available in unrestricted free agency. We take a look at who's available in the draft at the same time, so that as we make plans for free agency, we know how we want to, what we want to attack. And again, the first thing you got to do is evaluate your team, as we've already talked about it, and then understand and be honest and realize what you need. So there's a marriage going on, and like I said, people don't know how good your young backup tackle is progressing, or your young backup, safety is progressing. They don't know that because they're not at practice. These guys may not play a ton of snaps on Sunday, but we're very conscious of that of their development, and then how we're going to fill in, behind them.
So is it safe to say, so if you got a guy, let's say the edge is the new buzzword, right? And you got a guy who got injured, like a Lorenzo Carter, and you know what his progression is the conversation now, and I'm just using Lorenzo as an example, but position A. Is the discussion now, okay, is this guy that is in the draft or this group of guys, if we had to draft him with the guy we have here, would he be better? Is that the type of conversations that you guys have?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't, you can't be afraid of if you draft over a player, you draft over a player. You can't have too many good players at any position. You can't. And you can't pass up a really good player, even if you think you have even if you believe, that you have a solid player. If when you have an opportunity to draft and you have an opportunity to draft over him, think of you've created competition, and either way, you've created whoever wins the job, you've created quality depth. And at the end of the day, everybody understands that your entire roster is going to play. Before the season's over, your 53-man roster and most of your practice squad, they're going to end up playing.
Yeah, it's like when you were the director of pro personnel and, Ernie Accorsi with Strahan and Osi on the roster, and Tuck says, hey, Matthias Kiwanuka's there. We got to take him. And, that led to Super Bowls. Kiwi was a member of 2 Super Bowl championship teams.
Exactly. People look at you like you have brain damage now when you do things like that. And but you do those things because especially at some positions you can't not do it is probably a poor way to say it, but that's what I believe.
Dave, this program tonight is for season ticket holders, so we have some questions from season ticket holders. I've got a couple of them for you here. This is from Scott Stefanik from section 124. Kind of what Carl talked about as far as the limited college season. Do you think that there might be a greater amount of overlooked talent that's going to be available later in this draft than maybe in other years?
I don't think that, because what's happened is because of the pandemic, we've almost become crazy people about, have we evaluated every single player, on the Division I teams. We've really been very conscious of it, and and there's been an incredible load created because of that. And oh, by the way, a lot of the kids we wrote reports on are going back to college for another year. But I don't think there'll be many guys overlooked. Everybody's still doing their homework. The only thing is you just don't have you haven't been able to put your gloves on people. That's the biggest difference between this draft and all others.
Another question from a season ticket holder is Leon Batista. Generally speaking, in the job that you sit in, how tough is it personally to release or trade somebody that you drafted yourself?
It's funny. Obviously, when I was in Carolina, Ron Rivera used to kid me. He used to say, wait until you have to cut one of your own draft picks. And, it's not fun. Cutting a player is not fun. You feel like you're shattering dreams. And it's like firing someone. That's never fun. It's not easy. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's in the best interest of the Giants. That's what we do. And while it's not fun, and I mean, the first thing you got to do is figure out why you're in this position, and not make the same mistake again. But yeah, it's not fun. I've had to do it, and I don't enjoy it. And but you have to do what's best in the best interest of the organization all the time.
Carl, you got the final one?
Okay, Dave. So everyone that's looking, they want to know, who are you picking at 11?
I'm picking you. I've watched you run around. I think you could still play.
Would I be an edge or an off-ball linebacker, or what do they call me these days?
I'll tell you, with your length, we'd marry you up with Lorenzo, and you guys would go at it.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, I mean, this isn't giving away any state secrets. I'm sure in the facility right now, you guys have got your board relatively set. We're 8 days away from the draft, but we know quarterbacks are going 1, 2, and 3, right? So you're at 11. You guys have to be salivating the fact that from a football ranking standpoint, you're getting a guy that's going to be, maybe the 5th best player on a board.
Yeah, very, very, very potentially we could. Oh, absolutely, Bob. There are people saying there's going to be, before it's all said and done, 5 Qs could go in front of us. And I'm saying go, go, go. I will not be upset. But no, absolutely, we're in a good spot, and we're gonna get some real good players.
Dave, we appreciate a couple minutes. I know the Giants season ticket holders watching this Giants Town Hall appreciate you taking a couple minutes, and best of luck with the draft next week, and we'll visit again.
Thanks so much, and I hope everybody's staying safe, and God bless you all.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
You. That's Dave Gettleman taking a couple minutes to join us from the Quest Diagnostics Training Center. Hey, we got a little nugget for you, Giants fans. With Dunkin' delivering from more locations than ever before, it's now easier to get your faves fast with coffee, donuts, sandwiches, and more brought directly to your door, which is great if you don't plan on leaving the house at all today or you have a draft to prep for. Price and participation may vary. Exclusions apply. America runs on Dunkin'. Carl, you know, it's interesting what he said because you're attacking, we kind of talked about it earlier, you're attacking free agency, you're doing your draft run-up, and when you really look at it right now, based on the moves that the Giants were able to execute via free agency, I know every team says best available player, but they really are in a position where they can take the best available player as opposed to diving into like an obvious need. Yeah,
well, see, then you could end up with 3 best available players, meaning it could be a wide receiver, a linebacker, and an offensive lineman. And then I guess they have to go and see how they're graded across the board because you could get the best in 3 different categories that are sitting there for you to pick.
You're watching the Giants Town Hall, the free agency recap and draft preview presented by Verizon. Let's go back over to the Giants facility across the parking lot from MetLife Stadium and welcome in Kevin Abrams, the Vice President of Football Operations and Assistant General Manager of the New York Giants. Kevin, obviously it's been a whirlwind of an offseason. When you went into it, did you think that you guys would be as aggressive free agent-wise as you wound up being?
We did. I mean, that was our plan from the beginning. You know, we'd spoken to ownership weeks in advance of free agency and asked them, you know, to what extent we had to go ahead to be aggressive, and they gave us the green light, said to treat it like any other season, even though we knew it wasn't anything like any other offseason, with the cap being lower than it was the year before, and obviously being in a pandemic, having the effect it did on our revenues last year. But we were given all the support we needed and then some, and you know, we'd obviously identified our targets, and we were aggressive with our plan, and thankfully, most of what we planned on doing, we were able to accomplish.
Kevin, you were in a unique position because you had the top 2 defensive line free agents sitting in your living room, and you landed the top defensive lineman. If Leonard was on another team, how aggressive would you guys have been? Would you have been as aggressive as you've been with the rest of free agents in trying to land him if he were on another team as a free agent or not in your house?
Would we have been as aggressive to go get Leonard specifically? He would have been our top free agent this year, yeah. I mean, we had him on our free agency board. We graded the entire league, and Leonard was the top guy on our free agency board. So we would have been, he would have been target number 1 for us.
You know, Kevin, obviously you went and addressed the wide receiver position with Kenny Golladay as the top guy, and then John Ross brings added competition and is an interesting guy to bring in. Talk about the Adoree Jackson situation and the way that unfolded for you guys.
Well, that was a bit unique because we didn't expect them to be on the market. So after weeks or months of preparing for free agency, we had our board set, we had our targets, we had, you know, parameters of money assigned to each target so that we could figure out what bundles of players we might go to, knowing what our budget was. And then all of a sudden, Adoree Jackson became available. And that kind of caused, or not caused, but it required us to reevaluate what our plan was. Certain things changed for a number of reasons, so we just pivoted, and we'd always liked Adoree. We did some follow-up study, made some calls, got more information, and decided he needed to be target number 2 after, well, 3 after we had re-signed Leonard, signed Kenny, and then we decided, all right, let's go get Adoree.
Kevin, talk about the value proposition of, let's say, a draft that's deep with players at a position you may need, and then free agency. How are those discussions, how does that work with you guys when you say, okay, well, I got my free agency board set, and Dave says, well, here's what the draft looks like, and here's deep here. How do you guys reconcile what you should spend money on in terms of if it could be available in the draft and that value proposition?
Well, before we get to the offseason, obviously our college department is grading the country for the upcoming draft prospects. So by the time we get to being really knee-deep into our free agency preparations, we already have a preliminary sense of what our draft board's going to look like, what positions are deeper than others in the draft. And then once we have our free agency board set up, and then we'll share our personnel evaluations with their coaching staff. They'll look at the board, they'll come in with their own evaluations, and we'll identify where we have consensus because those are where we want to find our targets. But then when it comes to what assets in the veteran free agency, specifically that would be our cash and cap assets, what do we want to invest into certain areas if we know there are also opportunities to get players of quality at that same position in the draft, which obviously require using different assets. And then you balance, are we better spent using our money on positions that aren't as deep in the draft, and are we better using our draft capital on positions that aren't quite as deep in the free agency? What opportunities are out there in the free agency market? So it's a bit of a balancing act. You know, it's not a perfect science, but at least it gives you some guidelines as to where you want to allocate each set of assets.
Kevin, our friends over at the NFL offices, Howard Katz and Michael North, every year they throw out a zillion different schedule possibilities before they finally unveil the final one. With the uncertainty with the salary cap and so much in flux, how did you attack it? Did you have several different thresholds? All right, if it goes to here, here's what we can do. In other words, so you had a plan when you found out what the number was.
Certainly. I mean, we had a plan for, 12 months ago, or now almost 24 months ago. We, went into our 2020 offseason knowing what we expected 2021 to look like cap-wise, and obviously that changed dramatically due to the pandemic. That didn't provide a lot of certainty other than the cap wasn't going to go up, if at all, and might go down. So now we had to prepare for a flat cap, a slight decrease, a larger decrease. So we had probably 3 different scenarios that we were operating with. We're doing the same thing for 2022 because we don't know what that number is going to be yet, and there are a lot of variables that can still have a great impact on that. So you come up with multiple scenarios, you prepare for all 3, you make sure that every decision that we're making, everyone understands what the consequences are of today's decisions on all 3 of those scenarios, and as long as you're communicating and transparent so everyone knows, there's no surprises, and you can plan accordingly.
Kevin, obviously this event tonight is for our season ticket holders, so I've got a couple questions for you from season ticket holders. The first one comes from Seth Keisman, and here's the question. Most of us fans, and probably us in the media as well, have no idea what the salary cap really entails. Can you explain to us how you learned how to do this, and what do you think helped you along the way in your career?
Well, I was fortunate. I was doing some internships in the NFL. My last one was with the Washington Redskins as a scouting intern during training camp in 1998. And I happened to be on a call with someone from the league office who mentioned an internship at the Management Council, which handles the salary cap and the collective bargaining for the league on behalf of the owners. And they had an internship that was about to become available. It was recommended to me that I apply for it. I did. I think I was the only applicant because no one knew what the Management Council was all those years ago. So I got it by default, and the internship was fantastic. It taught me a lot. I'd never aspired to work specifically around the salary cap. I knew what it was. I was fascinated by it, as I was fascinated by everything team building and football operations. But it wouldn't have occurred to me to try and work in that area specifically, and then getting the opportunity to do that at the league office. What I wanted to do was get into a front office in any role in team building, and it gave me a specific skill set at a time where clubs were hiring people for the first time to work specifically on their salary caps. And so that experience made me kind of a unique candidate, more out of good fortune than anything else. And the Giants happened to need to fill the role for the first time, and I interviewed with Ernie, and was fortunate enough to get the position. But it was the Management Council under Peter Rucco, who was a great mentor of mine. There's the Bill Walsh coaching tree, there's the Ron Wolf front office tree, and then there's the Peter Rucco football executive tree. I mean, he's got people placed in probably half the teams in this league, and I was fortunate enough to spend some time with him at the Management Council, which was a big step for me to get to the Giants.
Next question comes from Rick Acosta. How much of a role do you play in making personnel decisions as an assistant GM? Is this a position that's a grooming position where learning what it takes to become a GM and eventually wind up having your own team to run?
Well, generally speaking, at the Giants, I mean, we put a great emphasis on professional development. We'll do things like scout schools for people that work in non-scouting departments in our football operations. We'll run seminars on the salary cap. We'll educate everybody on what we do in our data and innovation department so that they know how to best take advantage of that department as a resource. And we want everyone to be familiar with all different departments within football operations. We feel like that kind of education leads to more collaboration and makes us better as a whole. Specifically, in my case, I was lucky when I first got to the Giants that soon after being in the building, Ernie allowed me or asked me to get involved in negotiations. He encouraged me to work with Dave Gettleman when he was our pro personnel director, and I was queuing up beta tapes for him and helping him to establish short lists for players and organize workouts. And then through those tapes I would queue up. Dave finally allowed me to sit in and watch over his shoulder as he watched players and told me what he was looking at and asked me to do some film grading myself. And then Ernie also asked me to write some or edit some director's reports on the college side. And then Jerry Reese, when he was the GM, asked me to go in the road a little bit. And it's just sort of grown over time that I've had a role in personnel. I'm very deferential to our personnel department. They do it all year round, all day, every day. I contribute when I can. I enjoy it. But I also know that I have other responsibilities that are my priority. But when I can contribute to the personnel department, it's a part that I really enjoy. And it's really good collaborating with our personnel people, just like, we try to foster a collaborative environment everywhere.
Kevin, first of all, we want to thank all the fans, season ticket holders' participation. All the questions are presented by Verizon. Kevin, we want to thank you for a couple minutes and sort of shedding some light into how it all kind of comes together when it comes to the dollars and cents of putting a football team together.
It was my pleasure. It's good to see you, Bob and Carl, and hello to everyone out there. We appreciate all the support of our season ticket holders, so it's been a pleasure to be here tonight.
Yep, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see you in person sooner rather than later, and we can get back across the parking lot. Kevin Abrams, the Vice President of the New York Giants football operations and Assistant General Manager. Still to come on the program, one of those new free agents is Adoree Jackson. He's going to join us. Plus, we'll be joined as well by Kyle Rudolph, another new free agent for the New York Giants, as well as Blake Martinez, who got 1 year under his belt. And, Carl, you're a businessman. Along with being a broadcaster, you run your own company. It's one of those things that there's a lot of things that become intertwined. Fans, it's football.
Sure.
But, there's a lot more to it than just football.
No, it is. And the other part of it is that you're dealing with humans, right? So you've got the money aspect of it, and, players are going to want the money that they want, but you've got to make sure that it's the right fit. And so people thought the Giants were crazy that they were actually interviewing free agents, and free agents were actually staying and asking questions of the team. But that's how you find that you have the right fit.
Well, we talked about some of the moves, and Kevin Abrams and Dave Gettleman talked about the fact that they had to adjust their plan a little bit because one of the free agents that was on the board they didn't think was going to be on the board. And his name is Adoree Jackson. He joins us right now here on the program, 2017 first-round draft pick of the Tennessee Titans. And Adoree, Bob Papa, along with Carl Banks, thanks for joining us here this evening. This event is going live to all the Giants season ticket holders, presented by Verizon. So welcome to the New York Giants.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I hope you guys are having a blessed one so far.
That's so far. Well, we're talking to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't get much better than that. Hey, how surprised were you that you're going to be wearing Giants blue? Things kind of move quickly, and next thing you know, you're a New York Giant. Talk about that process for you.
It was a crazy process, first off getting released. And then for me, it was just about staying patient, staying prayed up and keeping faith and understanding that it wasn't the end of my journey. And I knew other things were in store for me. And, to hear the Giants reach out to me and going up there to visit while I was waiting and hearing you guys talk. That was a big part, just being able to go and talk from the front office all the way down to the managers and everybody that is there. And so just to be able to have those guys, even Jesse Armstead, I was able to chat up with him, which was pretty cool to talk to. And it's just one of those things that you needed, and all the dots connected. Knowing a lot of people there, from Priestley, crossing paths from the coaching staff that may have recruited me in high school to go to college, from different coaches that I crossed paths with and I played with in the NFL, and Dr. Liney, who was there at SC, and a couple of the players that I played with from either the league or in college. So it was a big factor, and I always prayed for clarity and trying to connect the dots, and those were the two things that helped me out a lot.
Adoree, one of the things that if fans don't know, you're among the top 5 or 10 cornerbacks at defending the deep ball, balls over 20 yards or more. I want to know, is your experience as a wide receiver, did that help you hone your skills as a cornerback in playing the deep ball?
I think being able to play the offensive side of the ball, T. Martin teaching me a lot when I was at USC and different things. And I had Coach Ronnie Bradford and Coach Hayward, helping me as well. And I think just being a younger kid, my brother is 7 years older than me, and my sister was 14 years older than me. So just trying to hang out with them and just to be able to compete and play with them, because you always hear about that if you can't hang or you can't keep up, you can't hang. And so that was pretty much how the competition and probably the deep ball and everything's going after that intensity that I had, because I'm always wanted to hang out with my big brother and spend time with him. And I feel like that was one of the things that I had to do, was to keep up. So I think that goes credit to that, and then just the coaching that I had along the way at USC helping me.
Talking to Giants fans right now that are watching, season ticket holders, explain to the Giant fan what you're going to be bringing to the table to this defense and how you're going to fit in.
I'm just going to be a great teammate, first of all, to the guys. I'm willing to learn. I don't know a lot of anything, pretty much. I'm always willing to learn. Just going out there competing and playing, just trying to be a brother to the guys in the locker room, keep a smile on their face, just be a great guy, a genuine person, that all I know how to be. And then football-wise, just trying to be somebody that can lead by example, be going out there and compete day in and day out, and getting 1% better every day. And I think that's what I'm just going to bring to the table, just a competitor. Compete and just not trying to bring the best out of me, but my teammates as well.
What did you learn about this staff and the culture that they're trying to instill that made you attracted to the New York Giants? Because the interview process, from what I heard, went both ways. It wasn't just them talking to you, but you were asking questions as well.
Yeah, it really started with Logan Ryan. One of the smartest guys I know, so I would ask him a bunch of questions. Then I asked him because he's a player. Then I asked the coaches, and I just try to make sure everything aligned and everything fit with the stories that they were both telling, and then other players as well, because one person can have one opinion. I just always ask everybody, what's the pros and the cons? What do you like? What do you don't like? And for me, it just balanced out and matched. What they wanted from me as a player and as a person is the same thing I wanted for myself. So when those core foundations align, I felt like that was just a great fit for me.
Adoree, we're 8 days away from the draft, so I want to go back to a little draft memory from you. You were a first-round draft pick coming out of USC. What was it like for you in the run-up to the draft, and what advice will you give to whomever the Giants draft in the first round, second round, when you finally get a chance to meet them?
Draft was pretty crazy for me. I tried to keep and calm my nerves. I was playing dominoes on my phone the whole time. I really didn't want to go to the green room because, you always hear those stories of you don't know if you're going to get picked or how it's going to be. So it was a little nerve-wracking, but, my mom always told me to keep faith and understand that the Lord didn't just bring me this far just to get this far. So, and I didn't really plan on going to the green room because of those couple factors, but my mom wanted me to go. And I felt like it would be a great experience because I always talked about it and dreamed about getting drafted. And I felt like if I, now that I think back at it, if I didn't go, I probably would have been disappointed in myself. But for the future Giants, whether you get drafted in the first round or the last round, just come in ready to work, have fun and compete. And, when your name is called, just soak and enjoy the moment as much as possible. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and keep being what got you, keep doing what got you here to this point. Don't change, don't waver. Understand that the things that you've done was good enough to get you here, so keep doing that and just add on to it as you come along. And I'm excited for the new teammates and to be able to see them, to be able to get back out there.
Adoree, we have some questions for you from season ticket holders, and it's sponsored and brought to you by Verizon. First one comes from Jack Davis. All right, do you prefer to play man-to-man or zone?
So first time I ever played cornerback, I was actually in my sophomore year in high school, and we really played a lot of man, and I just got used to it. I didn't really understand it, about playing man-to-man, the people not throwing your way. So I used to get frustrated. I remember I would call my dad after the game, like, man, I'm not getting no action. I need to go play offense. I don't even like what it is. And then my coach, told my dad, well, this is what it is about playing man-to-man, and that's a good thing if they don't throw it your way and to be able to, do certain stuff in the game. So I think once I got older, I started to appreciate the man-to-man concept and be able to just guard one man and just match him.
All right, the next question comes from John Sarando. What would you say is the strongest part of your game, and what do you hope to continue to improve upon as a player?
I think my strongest part of my game is, I would say, my playmaking ability, be able to make plays on the ball, change the direction that I have, and my speed and the things I want to improve on is pretty much everything. There's not one thing that I'm set in stone comfortable with me doing. I'm always looking for room to improve and whatever it may be. I remember I even text Champ Bailey and ask him, when I can call him and talk to him and try to, get pointers and see what he thinks I can do and what I can improve on. So I'm always trying to talk to people that's been there, done it, and has been great at what they do and trying to improve my game. So I'm always willing to learn. Talk to Coach Henderson. We go back and forth, seeing what we can improve on, what I can do, and just trying to stay sharp, not just physically, but mentally as well.
Adoree, we appreciate a couple of minutes. Carl, you got another one for him, or you good?
No, just wishing you luck and welcome to the Big Blue.
Thank you so much. You guys have a blessed one. I'm excited to be here, a Giants fan. Thank you. I'm excited.
Yep, right. Great to have you. Adoree, thank you so much for joining us. That's Adoree Jackson, a proud new member of the New York Football Giants, sharing his draft memory, being a first-round draft pick of the Tennessee Titans in 2017. And, Carl, you take a look at, his resume, 46 games, dealt with some injury last year. He's good at locating the football. He's also, and I know you played with Mark Collins, he's not scared to play the run.
Exactly. And so that is the thing that excites me most about this Giant defensive backfield configuration, is because they have guys that can just about do everything that's asked of them. So you don't have to feel like, well, if they run the ball to this side, I can't rely on my corner if he's the end man on the line of scrimmage. These guys all have a skill set that pretty much travels with whatever the coaches need them to do.
Yeah, we saw that last year with James Bradbury. He's more than willing to play the run.
Yep.
Jackson's also a very physical corner. You couple that with the safeties that they have and the versatility that a guy like Logan Ryan brings to the table. And, we saw it last year with Darnay Holmes. Late in the season, there were a couple of games that he missed, and the Giants were affected by that. If he stays healthy going into year number two in Patrick Graham's defense, this secondary, which at times could have been spotty, could suddenly become a big strength, which, by the way, helps the pass rush.
It really does. It helps the pass rush. It helps the safeties when they know, or a coach knows that you've got two corners that are reliable. You don't have to shade your coverage to the weak link. Now you have a lot of flexibility.
And also, one guy that missed a lot of last season, so he kind of had a half a rookie season, is Xavier McKinney. And
yeah.
I think to see his maturation as far as, getting a training camp under his belt, getting the season going, that adds another weapon for this team.
They are so multidimensional on defense.
All right, we're going to be talking with Kyle Rudolph in just a bit, one of the new free agents that the Giants signed in this offseason. And Blake Martinez is going to join us as well. So we got a lot more to come for you, the season ticket holders. But, Carl, I just want to talk about the kind of players that the Giants have brought in. We heard Adoree Jackson, and we've Bradbury from last year, Blake Martinez. They're bringing in people that kind of fit the mold of team.
Mm-hmm.
They're young guys, a lot of these free agents. They haven't gone long in the tooth, guys. Most of them are a lot younger. But they're team guys. Everywhere you go. You ask anybody who was with the Lions, and they'll say Kenny Golladay, one of the first guys in, last one to leave, not a prima donna. That's an important factor, too, in building a culture.
It is the most important factor in building a culture is to have team unity, because those guys can hold each other accountable. And when you look at the age of this group, they're probably age 25 on average, right? You've got a young coach. You've got a teaching philosophy, so that they can get everyone's attention, and these guys will all buy in, because as they said, it's almost like a college atmosphere. Like they are fighting for their brother. So it's not, I mean, everybody has their money, so it's always a business, right? But they walk in their locker room, they're vibing with each other. They're fighting for each other. They're holding each other accountable. And that's important. In some organizations, it's lost because, you know, guys get a little older and they have different interests. But these guys are all coming up together.
You know, as I'm looking at our set here in the Legacy Club, you talk about buying in and being team friendly. Carl, if you look over my right shoulder,
there it is.
I mean, there's the MVP of Super Bowl 25, O.J. Anderson. I mean, that's a guy that epitomized buying in. This guy was the Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was the man with the St. Louis Cardinals, and suddenly he's showing up with the New York Giants, and Joe Morris had just come off a great 1985. And he was basically just a role player, but attitude was a key component, and eventually he winds up being a Super Bowl MVP.
100%. From the minute he walked through the door, he came in and said, look, I'm only here to help you guys out. You guys are a good football team, but you let me know what you need from me. So when he had to run scout team for us, he's like, Banksy, I'm going to give you guys what you want. Tell me how hard you want me to go. I'll give you game speed if you want it. He was the ultimate teammate.
I wonder if our camera is in a lockdown position. Could you pan that camera a little bit to the left over Carl's shoulder? Can you just pan it over a little bit? So there's another guy right there, number 44, Ahmad Bradshaw. You want to talk about team, all team. This is a guy that, you know, if the Giants were ever honor Ahmad Bradshaw, they'd probably have to hang in the rafters walking boots, because he would spend the entire week in walking boots because his ankles were so messed up. But he would go out there hobbled and just pick up blitzes because he had that much respect for his quarterback. Didn't matter how hurt he was. Didn't matter if he couldn't really run when he was banged up. He's like, I got to go protect my quarterback. Yep. That's the kind of guy that wins championships.
And that's the culture that they're building here. That's the type of culture that they want.
So this is fun because, you know, a week from Thursday night, a whole new group of Giants are going to get drafted starting Thursday night, then rounds 2 and 3 on Friday night, and then the rest of the draft comes with the rest of the weekend on Saturday. And, Carl, the free agents are awesome, and they help kind of bring things together. But like that 07 class or your class of 84, rookies really add an element when they are guys that all buy in and guys that know that they have to be ready, because as we saw in the 07 season, every single rookie that was drafted at some point made plays to help the Giants win in important spots.
You're absolutely right. And that's when you have a roster that's in transition and you need to go to the next step, whether it's from average to above average or from above average to championship, your rookies, they're the adrenaline. Those are the guys that come in and infuse your roster with their contributions.
Yeah, you know, you need that kind of mix. I mean, the Giants have brought in some younger free agents. They've brought in some veteran free agents, you know, guys that have been there, done that, had success individually in the league. And then you got young guys that are just fired up and ready to go. And then you're incorporating those guys into a locker room that really gelled last year under new head coach Joe Judge and his coaching staff. And you can really sense as the season went on, there was a camaraderie that was forming with this team.
Yeah, there was a belief in each other, you know, and you could tell there was no fight that was too tough for them to be in. The bigger the opponent, the harder they played. Now, sometimes they weren't good enough, right? But you could tell they didn't back down from any opponent, and they played as best they could.
All right, we are ready to introduce our next guest, who comes to the Giants after a long tenure with the Minnesota Vikings. Just a guy who just brings a lot of intangibles that we've talked about. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler. drafted out of Notre Dame in 2011 with the Minnesota Vikings. Kyle Rudolph joins us to this Giants town hall in which all Giants season ticket holders presented by Verizon are joining tonight. Kyle, Bob Papa, Carl Banks, thanks for a couple of minutes. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're doing great. We're doing great. All right, so first question for you. I know it's going back a little bit, but talk about the run-up leading up to the 2011 draft. Your name finally gets called. What was that week leading up to the draft like for you?
Man, I mean, it's hard to believe that was 10 years ago already, and it seems like the last decade has gone by in the blink of an eye. But seeming like it was yesterday, I remember being back home in Cincinnati, surrounded by family and friends, extremely excited about a dream come true. Something that I worked for my entire life, and you finally hear your name called in the draft. It's funny how that process works out. For me, the Minnesota Vikings were a team that I hadn't talked to, and here they are. 612 area code comes on my phone, and the Minnesota Vikings draft me. So I think everybody has a different draft experience, and mine was one where I ended up in a place where I never thought I would be.
So now that you're there, and your first day, I always like to get the first day of school type of stories, like your first practice as a pro. What was that experience like?
Well, we were thrown into the fire really quickly because I was drafted in the year of the lockout. So no rookie mini camp to kind of dip your toe in the water and then go through OTAs and mini camp with the vets. It was the end of July. We reported right to training camp, and there I am standing in the huddle with Donovan McNabb, Adrian Peterson, Steve Hutchinson, all kinds of NFL legends. And like I said, there was no dipping your toe in the water. It was straight to training camp, and we hit the ground running.
With that said, Kyle, obviously last year with the Vikings you had to deal with it, and now you're going to be coming to a new team with the Giants with, again, kind of limited interaction of, it's not like, hey, everybody's going to be in the weight room, everybody's hanging in the locker room, the whole team's in the cafeteria. How difficult will it be for you to make that transition to a new organization, a new team, without the full interaction that you've had throughout all the other years of your career?
For me, and I talked about this a little bit the other day, on our call with a lot of the guys on the team, I feel like a rookie all over again. I'm coming to a new organization, new teammates, new coaches, a new offensive system. But the biggest thing that you get out of the 9 weeks that we're together in the offseason is the camaraderie of hanging out with the guys in the locker room and in the weight room and having lunch together. Even if we get to be in the building, we can't have that amount of people together at one time. So, for me, it's a bummer because that's what I would really enjoy about this offseason and having the opportunity to get to know a lot of my teammates, a lot of my new teammates that I don't know currently. So we'll have to find creative ways to do it over Zoom meetings and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's what I'll miss most about, not being able to be in the building, with the guys.
Well, I want to talk about degree of difficulty here because you have been known to make some incredible catches, and I want you to take our season ticket holder into that moment, that mindset of when that ball's coming and you're saying, oh boy, this one's low, I got to go reach for it, or I got to catch it and roll over. Talk about what goes through your mind with those types of catches.
Well, the biggest thing for me is if the quarterback trusts me enough and, feels like he can throw the ball in a place where he knows only I can catch it, then I better catch it for him. So, whether that's a high ball in the back of the end zone or, a ball that he has to put low and away from a defender, if the quarterback trusts me enough to throw the ball in a tight window and, maybe throw a ball in a position that he shouldn't, knowing that he has all the trust in me to either make the catch or nobody makes the catch. So when I see the ball in the air, I just, I got to go get it. Wherever he has to throw it to make it happen, I got to bring it in.
Kyle, this event tonight, which is presented by Verizon, is for Giant season ticket holders. So we have some questions for you from some of the Giant season ticket holders presented by Verizon. Question number one comes from Roman Hadi. What's the one thing you're looking forward to about being in New York? I see you got the Yankee hat, so you're ready.
Absolutely, I'm ready. I think the biggest thing for me is just being a part of the New York Giants culture. I talked about it a little bit when I came there to sign my contract. The culture that Coach Judge and Jason Garrett are establishing on the offensive side of the ball and throughout our team, the culture and the history and tradition of the organization, multiple Super Bowl championships. I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of the history and tradition of the New York Giants. So I think that's what I'm most excited about coming to New York.
All right, speaking of history and tradition, David Foster, another season ticket holder, wants to know what your best Notre Dame experience was and why.
I think for me, countless games jump up, immediately, but having the opportunity to be the first tight end in school history to start as a true freshman, on opening day in a school that's had unbelievable tight ends, notably one, a New York Giant legend in Mark Bavaro, but countless other unbelievable tight ends. I'll never forget running out of that tunnel as a true freshman for the first time and then having to take the field. Most of my buddies and roommates were redshirting, and they got to run out of the tunnel for the first time and, could wave to mom and dad in the crowd and take it all in. And the ball was kicked off, and I had to go out there and get ready to go. So I think that's what I'll always remember most about, my experience at Notre Dame.
Carl, you want one more for him you got?
Well, I just want to know, are you a fisherman?
We've been in Minnesota for a decade, and as you know, Minnesota is the land of 10,000 lakes. So if you don't find yourself on a boat fishing here from time to time, you're probably lost. So I like to catch fish. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a fisherman because I'm not very good unless somebody shows me exactly where to go.
Well, I want our season ticket holders to send you a few places. New Jersey is underrated in its fishing. They've got some pretty good fishing there if you ever want to get out on the boat. And I know you know about the Jersey beaches, but the fishing isn't bad either.
One of my former teammates in Minnesota, that was a former Giant, Linval Joseph, used to talk about how great the fishing was in Jersey all the time.
And you can always just go down to the Hudson River and cast a line in, and you don't know what you'll catch. Fish or other, but you'll catch something.
Anything, shoe.
I grew up on the Ohio River, so I know how that goes.
There you go.
Kyle, thank you so much. I know the season ticket holders tonight really appreciated you taking a little bit of time. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you when you get here to East Rutherford.
Absolutely. It's not the same with you hosting without Coach Weiss. It was a little different talking to you.
I know. Well, Coach Weiss is angling for a job here with the Giants, but he ain't replacing Carl, that's for sure. Thanks, Kyle. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Kyle Rudolph, he brings a wonderful personality, Carl, and leadership, which is so important for this football team.
Indeed. Again, there's a certain characteristic, as you can see, that this organization is bringing in, not only the guys that they're drafting, but the characteristics of the players. There's a certain profile that you see, guys that have been high-level performers, but high-level character leadership guys as well. And I think that is, what will get this organization on a sustainable path.
Aha, and our next guest has all of those attributes. Hey, Giants fans, don't forget, with Dunkin' delivering from more locations than ever before, it's now easier to get your faves fast with coffee, donuts, sandwiches, and more brought directly to your door, which is great if you don't plan on leaving the house at all, or maybe you have a draft to prep for. Price and participation may vary. Exclusions apply. Always remember this: America runs on Dunkin'. And we're joined by Blake Martinez, who was a fourth-round draft pick of the Green Bay Packers in 2016 out of Stanford. And Blake, what was it like for you in this run-up to the draft?
It was a roller coaster ride. I'm not gonna lie. It was ups and downs of, okay, you're gonna get drafted here, you're not getting drafted here, you might get drafted here. This team might like you. This team might like you. And then as the draft went on, it was, hey, we expect you to get drafted here. And then as that kind of time frame started to dwindle and I wasn't drafted, you started to get disappointed, upset. But then obviously once you get that draft moment happen, you celebrate with your family and just have an amazing day of achieving one of your lifelong goals.
So as you're going through college and in your senior year, did you have a favorite team that you hoped would draft you?
Yeah, my favorite team growing up was the Denver Broncos. I would always go. My grandpa, my family's from Colorado, so we would always go when I was little to playoff games, normal regular season games. So that was kind of my number one team with my family and everything. But going into the draft, it slowly turned for me just to the point where I just wanted to get drafted, and whatever team drafted me was going to be my new favorite team for that standpoint.
Blake, you mentioned a culmination for these young men getting an opportunity to get drafted. Unfortunately, for some guys, that's the culmination. Once you get drafted, you realize it's just the first step. What was it like for you when you went to that first rookie mini camp and then your first time in the locker room with NFL players?
Yeah, it was definitely an eye-opening moment. Like you said, you get that opportunity to be drafted, but at that point, it's what are you going to make of that opportunity? And then when you step into that locker room for the first time, especially in Green Bay, I was with Clay Matthews, Julius Peppers, Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, and the list goes on during that time. And you're like, oh, wow, like I need to step up my game that much more. I need to do something extra. I need to make it where all of a sudden I get to that point when the season starts, I'm not a rookie. I'm all of a sudden a second, third year mentally in the football game, understanding it so the guys around me can trust me when I do go out there on the field.
So I can relate to that because I walked into a locker room with Lawrence Taylor and Harry Carson. In my first practice, Lawrence Taylor practiced faster than I ever played in college. How was that first practice experience for you?
Oh, it was a whirlwind. Like I just remember it as like it seeming like it was 10 days long because nonstop you're doing things, nonstop your mind was racing of what am I doing on this play? What am I doing on this? Where does my coach want to be? Okay, how do I not get yelled at? Like every single thing that can go possibly through your brain. And then you all of a sudden see these guys just like out there making it seem so seamless, and you're like, okay, I need to work to get to that.
Blake, obviously you came to the Giants last year as a free agent. Not the easiest year to be changing teams with the pandemic. Why did the adjustment work so well for you? I mean, 16 games, 16 starts, 151 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 picks. Why was it relatively easy for you?
Yeah, I think it was the ability that the coaches gave us to learn about each other, whether it was during meetings, made that an emphasis. And then on top of that, the guys in the locker room. I think this team was the first team that reminded me of like the college days where everybody's buddies, everybody's having fun, everybody knows about each other. Just because we're so young, and that's kind of what everybody on our team is kind of used to. And so it just made it simple to reach out to guys, go have dinner with guys, go play video games during OTAs together, and just build a bond. And then when you stepped on the field, it was like, oh, I'm playing with my best friend that I've known forever. And that's just kind of how it felt throughout the season.
So you were kind of one of the top leaders on the team, and it was by example. Obviously, you led by example. But was it almost like an environment of accountability where leadership wasn't so hard, where you had to stay on guys to do things?
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I think the coaches kind of, once again, like allowed that nature to happen organically. It wasn't just like, hey, Blake, you have to say something. It was like they held us to a certain standard. And then at that point, certain guys were showing that standard, and it started to become the majority. And then at that point, any guy that wasn't doing it kind of felt like, oh, I'm messing up. Like, I need to pick it up. I need to do this And then other guys that were putting in that much work to make sure they were at that standard weren't going to let other guys around them not reach that point in that level of play.
Blake, we have some questions from season ticket holders who are watching this evening, and this is presented by Verizon. The first one comes from a young fan who's actually playing football right now. His name is John Ruggiero, and he asks, for someone who's playing on offense right now but would like to be on the defensive side of the ball, what do you suggest to work on to become a better defensive player?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I always work for myself is just the fundamentals. Just becoming a technician, I think that's the number one thing that I focus on in football, which allows me to have 1 to 2 steps on guys that are out there running 4.4s, out there running 4.3s, whatever it is, athletic ability-wise. If you have the technician and the fundamental abilities, you're going to play quicker than guys that are faster than you, guys that are stronger than you. Obviously, the strength and speed will come. But the more you work on that, the more you're going to show up on the field and the more plays you're going to make and the better player you're going to be.
All right, another question from a season ticket holder, Angel Ortega. What are your thoughts now for the direction of this team and the expectation level of this team? And is this what you envisioned when you came to the Giants?
No, yeah, I think with the group of guys that we have, the way that we attack each day, the type of coaches we have, the way that they hold us accountable, definitely the sky's the limit. Obviously, this is a new year, new team. We need to build the group. We need to build the culture and keep that foundation that we laid last year moving into this year. And, yeah, continually get better each and every week and show that improvement that we did near the end of last season.
All right, famous 58, you get the last question. Fire away. Linebacker to linebacker.
When are we going to meet in person?
Oh, my gosh. You're telling me I can't wait. All I know is when we meet in person, I'm bringing the 58 jersey. I'm getting it signed, and it's hanging in my locker all year.
Perfect. And then I'm going to bring your jersey and have you sign it for me.
All right. Deal. All right, deal.
Hey, Blake, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you here in New Jersey and fired up for the 2021 season.
Oh, yeah. No, thanks for having me, and I'm excited too.
That's Blake Martinez. And, Carl, obviously a welcome addition for the Giants last year. And this is one of those situations where this football team is just building and building. And, you know, the foundation is there, but some more important pieces are coming next Thursday night with the start of the draft.
Yeah, it is. And it's an exciting time when you have a young team, like Blake said, and everybody's eager to do well. And you have a coaching staff that kind of set the table for how they want, the construct of how they want this team to look, feel, and play, and every guy is bought in.
All right, Giants fans, we hope you enjoyed this Giants Town Hall draft preview presented by Verizon. And don't forget, next week, starting on Thursday night with the Giants draft pick on the Giants media platforms, we're going to have complete coverage, not only with the opening round on Thursday night, but then on Friday night and throughout the course of the weekend. So go to all the Giants media platforms for the latest on Big Blue. For Carl Banks, I'm Bob Papa. Thanks for joining us, and thank you to all the season ticket holders for your support each and every year, for joining us here on the Giants Town Hall Draft Preview presented by Verizon.